I pointed at this red button over on the wall, and I was like, "What's that thing?" And knowing kind of what it would be, he mentioned, "Oh, that's an emergency shut-off button. You want to see?" And he slammed it.
Solution architects, what do they do? If you've worked in tech for any amount of time, or if you've been looking at a job in the tech field, you might already know job titles in tech can be super vague. But let me tell you this, if you are passionate about technology and love designing cutting edge solutions, you're in the right place. We're going to go explore all the ins and outs of this dynamic role and give you a glimpse of the incredible opportunities it has to offer. Today, we have Matthew, who is a solutions architect for VMware. Welcome to the show, Matthew.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Do you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got your start in the field?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Matthew Webb. I go by Matt. I'm a cloud solutions architect at VMware. I've been in the IT industry for, almost a decade now. Really, I got my start at Dell, the computer company, in 2009, selling computers and desktops on the queue, and really paved the way into an engineering path into cloud solutions architect, which is really, at the end of the time, a lot of solutions architects, it's like a pre-sales SE. It's had many different titles over the year.
Absolutely. Just, do you mind kind of diving in what a day looks like for you? What is your daily responsibilities there?
Yeah. In the cloud age, and especially, the product I cover Azure VMware Solution, which is VMware's software-defined data center stack in Azure. It's part pilot solutions architect, helping customers implement the first stages of what looks good for the product that I sell or what can fit their use case. And I'd say it's like 50-50. 50% of the time is about doing that job, and the other 50% of the time is pre-sales, things like going over an overview, a technical deep dive, going over the different types of use cases or the challenges the customer may be having to adopt our solution. So day to day, the one thing I love about being a solutions architect is just the vastness that you work with customers. I currently cover state, local, education, and federal accounts, but I've covered commercial and enterprise accounts. And I'd say what constantly keeps me in this is just there's never, like, every customer's a snowflake, even though maybe they're not as much of a snowflake as they think they are. Everyone has a unique business, right? Like they all have a different way they do things. They all have different challenges, and I think that's one of the things that pulls people into this type of role is like I have this tool, and I have to make sure that it fits to what your need is, or a solution that fits your needs.
Absolutely. And that sounds that sounds so interesting, because when I got into the tech field, my biggest concern is, you would hear these people that when they just started out in the tech field, they would get like siloed off into like a certain like technology, or just doing the same thing day in, day out. And that was a big concern of mine. But it sounds like, you kind of get to be a jack of all trades, and there's not one solution that fits all, and you kind of get to have a wide, range of experience.
And I think that's sort of the evolution of the industry, especially with the emergence of cloud and cloud technologies, whether it's private or public. I think we've gotten to a point where they're not the big complicated. So I started in the storage field. That's actually, I had a specific product area, which was just storage. And it used to be, you really had to have subject matter experts in storage because it was so complicated. If you think back into the Symmetrix days of LUNs and metal LUNs, and it was so niche and unknown that you had to have that expertise. But if you look at like just the arc of how storage has become way more user friendly, and just simpler to manage, especially with SSDs, the industry in general has asked us to be a jack of all trades. It is good to have expertise in a specific area. Matter of fact, I'm still sort of the storage guy when it comes to my team. And so when they have a storage problem with a customer, I'm the first one they go to. But you have to have like a well-rounded, expertise in all the areas. I was not a networking expert before I took this role, and now I'm not going to say I'm a network expert per se, but I learned way more about BGP I ever thought I would want to learn in my lifetime. So, that is the arc of this industry. It used to be you need to know one thing. Maybe that's just Windows. Maybe that's just Cisco iOS. Maybe that was just Dell iDRAC or a certain hardware vendor. Now the industry has had a shift to you need to kind of know everything and what it kind of digs into. You have to feel everything around IT to make it work for the business.
Absolutely. So let's dive into like how to become a solution architect. What did your learning path or your career path look like?
Yeah, I think you and your channel have shown there's not a single path to it, right? Like if you want to
Absolutely.
be in IT, you can be in IT. Mine is almost completely backwards than most people's journey. So let me kind of frame the typical journey. It's not not how everyone came into this type of role, but usually people worked like at a client like yourself, Dakota. Like you were
Yeah.
an administrator, or you ran a knock, or you had those 2 a.m. phone calls that wake you up because there's a switch down and it's causing
Yep.
repercussions throughout the whole network. I started, I got out of college in 2009. And man, talk about something that'll stain you for life. Getting out during the Great Recession, I actually worked at a debt collection company, and then I found a job at Dell. We were the first hiring class out of the Great Recession, and they need people to answer the queue calls. 1-800
Yeah.
call Dell. That was me on the other end of the phone. Do you want a laptop or a desktop? But I was always interested, and I've always been around technology in some way, whether it was my college career. I was a mass comm, so I did a lot of video editing and photo editing. So I've always been interested in the tech part. And when I got into the career field, I knew I wanted to be in the more high-tech server data center space. So I worked my way into that, which is very rare. Usually it's people, like I said, that worked in a NOC or worked in a data center, know that, and then have to learn sort of the sales side of working with a client, building relationships, and making sure that you're fitting their needs for their business and providing value. I had the sales piece of it, but I had to self-learn the technology. And so what I have seen on some other interviews I've done that I will 100% back is, try to make a lab. Like go, whether that's in Amazon,
100%.
yeah, free tier. The way I made my own lab is I got free gear. People started decommissioning stuff out of their data center. I said, I want it, bring it to me. And I got a little 10U rack that I put in the garage, and it was the worst place for airflow. And I had overheating happen all the time. My power bill was super high, but in the state of Washington, it's actually pretty low, cost per kilowatt hour. The lab was, I think, game changing for me. Feeling and touching that stuff, updating, like going through just knowing where the buttons were and just diving in. That's where I think I really had my technology expertise excel. Is that?
I think that's one of the best ways. And like, I love physical labs because you're actually feeling the hardware. You're feeling that Ethernet cable click in. You know who doesn't love physical labs? Your spouse. Every time I bring home a new thing from my lab, she's like, where on earth did you find this crap?
Yeah.
But
The box of wires that seem to just procreate. There's just more and more coming out of it. Or I remember in my lab too, I had to cut a hole in the garage to the other room so I could get it to my router so it'd have internet connectivity. Yeah. Spouses don't like labs. They definitely increase the the power bill, but I can't emphasize it enough. Like, especially for certifications, like you're going to pass it if you've got the hardware. So,
and it's also a great talking point about when you're talking to future employers. Bring that up during your interview, especially if you don't have a lot of experience in the field. I just did a video about that. That's one way to build experience is to do projects on a home lab. So,
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail the conversation there.
Absolutely. And even people that have been in the career, I don't think people realize how much like you may be working in the field currently as an IT administrator, but how often you patch, update, and install this stuff actually sometimes can go long stretches, especially if your company is trying to make it stretch every last dollar, right? Like you may have 5 or 7 year old equipment. Having your own lab where you can break things and you can just wipe and start over, or you can troubleshoot that one thing that had been bugging you that whole time, and it's on your timetable and you can sit there and think. Again, it's pretty invaluable. It's not a requirement. I think you can still learn by the books, by YouTube videos, by many different ways. But I can't emphasize enough of grabbing it. And if you're not going to be necessarily in the infrastructure field, then you need to get into the development, like cloud native applications, Kubernetes, like you need to be touching that stuff. So wherever you're interested, toy with the things in the field that you want to get into.
So let's dive into certifications. That's like the common question I always get. Like, what certifications can I get to help progress along this career path? Is there certain certifications you recommend over other ones?
Yeah. So for virtualization, especially, I work for VMware. There's the VCP program for data center virtualization. You have network virtualization, desktop virtualization, cloud management. Those are all good certifications to have, and I think it will get your foot in the door. But as a solutions architect and being in pre-sales, honestly, your brand and your name are the most important, right? Like you will carry relationships really that are very long term with customers. Now, in my career, I've had varying sorts of, I would say, territories. Sometimes I cover just the state of Oregon, and sometimes I've covered the whole country. Like right now, I cover the whole country. But you'll just, as people that are in this industry will tell you, it's a small world, and you will run into the same people. And so, working with customers through issues, things that you may have sold them that aren't meeting their expectations, when you show up and you stand by what you said and try to fix any wrongs you may have done, your brand's going to go further than any certification, in my opinion.
Nice.
But certifications are a great way to kind of enable you back into the lab of, they asked a question about this, but I know the answer. I don't know what it really means. Maybe I should toy around with it. So, some certifications I got that I think were really helpful for me, especially in virtualization and VMware in general, were the VCP for DCV, and then the network virtualization, VCP. Those are both huge.
Absolutely. I want to dive into building your brand a little bit further, because I think that is very useful advice. Because as much as I hate me to say it, a lot of times in tech, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Mm-hmm. What other tips and advice do you have for kind of building up your brand and, building up kind of that rapport in the tech field?
Yeah. So first I'd say, it does have to be the right visible role. So it's easy as a pre-sales, and once you're in that role, you're working with a lot of clients that make business decisions, and business decisions have visibility, right? So, I don't want to diminish the fact that you may only be in a help desk or something like that, but you can still be visible in those. And honestly, it's just do your job good and well, and make sure it's seen. Make sure that your success is seen. And sometimes that means, bubbling it up to your manager. Sometimes it's about blogging, making blogs. Sometimes it's just being active on Twitter, or I guess X now, or whatever social media that you use. Those things are all ways to build your brand, because it very much is marketing. If you take a marketing class, like, people will associate your name with hopefully positive things. That's what you want to come out of it. And even if it is associated with a negative time, if you were the one that showed up every day and said, we're going to work through this, that will still be Matt was there, right? Or Dakota was there. So, the marketing aspect is important. Make sure that you are doing things to be seen. But I honestly think it's as simple as doing your job well that you're currently in.
Nice. I want to dive into what career investment looks like in this field. A lot of people, they'll kind of get into some of those entry-level positions, either in sales or whatever, and they get stuck. They don't know how to pivot out into like their dream goal. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I think it's implementing yourself in the IT community. So everything we've talked about so far, I think, builds up to advancement. Making sure you're always a learner, right? And that may be getting a lab, that may be on YouTube videos, that may be starting to code in VS Code for the first time. Building a good, solid brand that will help with career advancement as well. But making sure that you're whatever group. So for people that are around VMware, they may be aware of the VMware users groups, which happen in every major city around the area. Go attend those, right? And they'll even have beers and engineers. Like go to those happy hour events. Go meet those people. I can't tell you how many job opportunities I've had because I met so and so at some beers and engineers. We kicked it off. We talked about things that weren't even IT related. He started to he knew my name, and then we ran into each other in the field. They saw how I operate, or how I did my business, or how I conducted myself, and then suddenly there was a role that opened for them, right? And sometimes, especially in sales, there's some sales reps that I'll work with until the end of days, just because of the relationship we've built too, right? So again,
absolutely,
getting out into the sub communities that are out there and finding those. It's almost, I would say, one of the easiest places is VMware and virtualization. I think they've had a great community between blogs, Twitter, and the users group, but there's going to be something like that in almost every expertise and field you're in.
Absolutely. And I personally, like I have like a salesperson I work with through one of our vendors, CDW, and I've used the same guy for the last 3 companies I've gone to.
Yeah.
And this last company I went to, he's like, the boss isn't letting me take on any new clients. I'm like, what's your boss's information? Because I'm going to let him know that they're going to lose out on our business unless I can work with you. Just because we had such a relationship and rapport built up and that level of trust, it goes a long way.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, relationships are key. I mean, I don't care what book you open up to. CEOs get there because they've built relationships on the board. CTOs, same thing. IT directors get their job because they have trust and relationships with their, the people that were their peers and went above, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So, these, again, in that, they're all intertwined, right? Like, building your brand, standing by what you do, building those relationships, being out in the community. They're all a muscle too. Like you can lose those if you don't actively try to maintain them. But they're all key to success and career advancement.
Absolutely. So I asked you this earlier. Tell me a story about when things went sideways, when something unexpected happened, and how did you learn to navigate those situations? I think that's a big fear for people when they're getting into a job role is like, I don't know it all. And what do I do when something bad goes, or something bad happens?
Yeah. Well, I would first say things are going to break in IT, and some of the best moments you're going to learn from are when it's really you feel like you're at your low, where you have that pit in your stomach of like, this was a resume generating event, as they call them, like an RGE. One funny one and one that I think really helped me in my career. So I'll stick with the funny one to kind of start on a high note. I remember doing like I worked at a hardware vendor. It was, Dell, and we were doing the typical customers taking us through their data center. And they had a pretty nice one. It was a smaller company. They had a glass wall, and they had like 3 or 4 racks with all their equipment. And they were just showing, this is what we got. This is the equipment we bought from you guys and what we use. And I pointed at this red button over on the wall. And I was like, "What's that thing?" And knowing kind of what it would be, he mentioned, "Oh, that's an emergency shut-off button. You want to see?" And he slammed it, and I go, "What did you just do?" And he laughed, and he goes, "I never connect it. I never connect it. I did that to freak people out." Well, then you started hearing the beeping of things rebooting going through. And apparently, oh my god, people were coming out of the their offices saying everything's down, can't get to the internet, can't get to any of this stuff. Apparently, the UPS guy, when he was going through and replacing all their stuff, reconnected it. Noticed it wasn't connected and reconnected it the day before we went through that one. So that was a funny one. Oh my god! That I only was associated the fact I was in the same room, and my deep IT, the IT gods were like, "Leave the data center now. Don't be associated with it." So that was a funny one. A more recent one I can recall. I do remember working with a higher education client that bought a product that we sold. And, it was a relatively restrictive product. It was not what they expected, right? Mm-hmm. And how they wanted to design it didn't fit within the bounds. There was a lot of angst. And I remember it was probably a 6-month ordeal. It was just one of those implementations from hell. It just plain and simple. We hit bugs. We had product limitations. We had, expectations were a whack on both sides. But we were able to work through it. And again, that's just, don't want to go into too many of the details, but, again, going back to the brand part that I've kind of sprinkled in through our conversation, you have to stand by and show up, right? Like it is on those days, you really don't even want to wake up for work in the next morning, but you have to work through those. You'll learn from it. You'll build better relationships from it. I mean,
absolutely.
It's almost like a marriage, right? Like you show up and work on your marriage every day, right? And so that's kind of what these business relationships are. Sometimes they'll be at their highs, sometimes they'll be at the lows, but show up every day and make sure you stand by what you say.
Yeah, that's so true because, that's where you really grow in this career field, I think, and it sucks sometimes, admitting that you screwed up, admitting that you did something wrong, that hurts every time. You're like, oh, I'm going to go, as a resume generating event.
Yeah.
But every time I've been placed in one of those situations in my career, I've always came out better for it. I've always learned a lesson. And so a lot of times you make it a bigger deal in your head than it actually ends up being.
That's true too.
So it's just better to learn and move on. And worst case scenario, if something does bad happen, heaven forbid you get fired or something, well, I can guarantee you're not going to make that mistake twice. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I mean, there's
Absolutely.
always opportunity in down times. I mean, you hear that even from economists when there's a big recession or a downturn in the market, a company will find a way to innovate and be better from it, right? And
Yep.
that's same for people too. I think, if everything was
Absolutely.
hunky dory, I don't think you'd learn anything from it. Like again, my biggest even technology advancements where I get more technical is when you really screw something up. So
Yeah. Oh, and that's how I got into the tech field. It was during a time where I had lost my job. I had a mortgage. I had 3 kids. We were in debt up to our eyeballs already. And I was like, I lost my job. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to get back into just another grunt work job, another manufacturing job. I want to go after my passion of tech. I want to enjoy what I do. And, it was like that extra motivation I need, the extra kick in the pants to be able to pursue my dreams and make that commitment. And, I've been in the field now for 4 years officially, and I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life and enjoying every day of it. So,
yeah, and we talk about a lot of the certifications, definitely the administrator hands-on keyboard type of roles, but you don't even need to have those technical skills. There are project manager skills that are needed. Obviously, sales doesn't necessarily need to be technical. People management skills, just being business savvy, it can be massive too in operations. So like, there's just so much opportunity in tech that if you do want to get into tech because you see opportunity there, there's many ways to do it. Not even just the ways we talk about. So.
Yep, absolutely. So what is one important lesson that you've learned in life that you want to share with everyone that you haven't already shared, that is?
Yeah. Just really sticking with it. I mean, heck, even within the last year, I can think of times where I have my highest highs of like, I can do no wrong and nothing will bring me down. And then you have your lows of like, why am I even in technology? I can't even make my own PC work, for Christ's sake, right? Like,
Yep.
you will, like, there are times like you will just push through. If you just push through, let me put it that way, you will eventually get to the other side of it, even as bleak as it sounds. I've been in, and I'm sure you have too, and a lot of other people. I've been on some really disgusting Sev 1, support calls that like somehow we just got through it, right? We don't even know how we fixed it, but we fixed it. And so, that's one thing I'd say. And then the other thing I'd say is when you do get your first tech job and you're in it, I always feel like there's that it almost seems like the first 3 or 6 months after the honeymoon period is over, you're like, why did I even come here? You're going to hit that point. You're going to be like, I don't know what I'm doing. This customer is mad at me. I screwed up really bad here. I don't even know if I'm doing it. Push through it. Like I said, just push through it and you'll be good.
So if people want to find you and connect with you and, learn more, where can they reach out to you?
I'm on Twitter, Threads. I like to really post on LinkedIn. Is probably my favorite place to go into.
Nice.
Definitely connect with me there. I like to post about the product I currently cover, and I love to share just business and technology advancements in general. So yeah, you can definitely find
Absolutely.
me.
We'll make sure and put those links in the description.
Yeah, for sure. And then we've also got our AVS YouTube channel. You can definitely check if you're interested in the product specifically. That's something you can check out. A lot of tech videos there that you'll hear my voice walking through it. But yeah.
So cool. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I look forward to having you back on the channel sometime in the future.
Yeah, thanks so much. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, keep learning.